Welcome to Starting with Today's The Power of Creating It. This month, we're celebrating Women's History Month. And tonight, we have the Alexia Clincy of Cap Soc, who is here to share her experience of entrepreneurship, Black womanhood, and how you are trying to balance it all. So stay tuned, grab something to drink, and come meet us back for this great and lively discussion. Hey, thank you. All right, we're getting started. Joining us.
Yeah, you accepted that fast. I'm all close to the screen. Dang, I gotta back up.
Hey, hon.
Hey, sorry, I feel
How
like it's
are
a little
you?
dark in here. I'm doing good. I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks so much for joining us. I know that you are busy running around this globe,
I'm
as
so
always.
busy. You know
So we
what?
get
It is what it is. I thought about the fact that it's a lot of things going on in life right now, but also that's one of the biggest things about entrepreneurship is that you got to handle business and take care of those things. So, definitely a big major thing to know that you're signing up for in this case.
that is so true, and that brings me back to one of the first. You're one of the first people I followed early in the Twitter career that was an
Oh, back
entrepreneur,
when
but
back
then
when I was saying anything.
it was a wild, wild west of Twitter. It was a wild
It was.
of Twitter, the early days. But one of the things I appreciated about you even then is that you were very authentic with your voice and with your brand. And I saw
Mhm.
so much of my own potential in you being very honest and candid about who you were and what you stood for. So let's
Mhm.
start there. Let's introduce you to the people. You're already famous. So, but let's just, for anyone who's new, let's bring them in and introduce you. And I'll write a comment while we're here.
Okay. Hola, folks.
Hola. So tell us a little bit about you and your
So,
company.
okay. So I am Alexia Clincy. I run Cap Soc. It was originally called Capitalized Social, and then over time, as things have evolved, services have evolved, the teams have evolved. Um, Even kind of tightening up like who we are, what we do, right? All of those things have evolved over time and it has been revamped to Cap Soc. So the name of it is Cap Soc. We are a digital marketing firm. So we develop out all the social media strategy for our clients and help amplify their voice and the impact that they have through whatever products and services they offer to the world. So the cool thing about the work that we do is that we're just amplifying, other folks who are making an impact, right? So it's our way of kind of also spreading the good word. And most of our clients are either Black owned business or have a give back component to communities that are undervalued, etc. So it's a really good opportunity to see other people's business grow.
Can you tell us a little bit about when you started and how you knew that was your
Hmm.
niche? I know you've done, you're well educated, well traveled, reverse. How did you hone
Hmm.
in your many skills to be like, this is what I want to do with my career?
Well, I love when people ask me about how or why I started this because even almost kind of how you just did it, it always feels like people want to frame it like you always knew you wanted to do it, or how did you decide? I didn't really decide anything. I couldn't find a job. I got out of grad school and I was already doing this work, right? So I was in grad school for intercultural communication. So I was interested um, at first in public policy and foreign service, started getting interested in private sector and started doing some work in social media space just because I was being kind of lazy in school and was like, oh, I'm on Facebook at the time and I can do all my projects using social media. And so I got more savvy on it and did more of like the academic work within networking. And so I started to work with a few people around the area of DC at the time.
Right.
And then it just kind of grew from there. So after I finished with grad school, I couldn't find any other type of job that I was thought I wanted to do or was looking for. And so basically I said, well, I'll make this my thing. And then from there, it's just, gone up, but definitely lots of ups and downs. But that's how it started because I had a good opportunity to where I was staying in a place where I did not have overhead, you know, and so it's
Yeah.
not like you come out the gate making a whole lot of money or anything. I
Right.
was just able to make it work. So that's kind of really the story of how I got started with everything.
That's so similar to me, well, different but similar. But like one of the things
Mhm.
I was doing before I started with today was looking for jobs in the nonprofit sector, and I had worked at like
Mhm.
an entry level, but there were none for like mid management to break in, and especially in
Mhm.
DC, where it's the nonprofit capital of the world. And so I was like, I didn't see programming for people who looked like where I came from, that were ran by people where I came from. So it was really
Mhm.
important to kind of fill that gap for me, and that's kind of where I started. It's like this: if I found a job, I probably would have not taken this path that optimizes my gifts and how we see the community that we serve. So that's
Mhm.
really really powerful. I think one of the things that drew me to you in your work is like it felt so an extension of who you are, and then B, I felt like you were just so um just willing to share your experiences, your challenges, your relations. I met you in DC some years back.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that stood out was like I was in the audience. I was like, I'm just gonna come in and get my little notes, come back. And you like, I know you. And I was like, what? But you were so down to earth, so approachable, and so honest and real. And you really talked to me about at that point I had not gone to full-time entrepreneurship. But I think I did in the next year. So it's like, but you're like, it's gonna be ups and downs, but you have to trust that like the next check is gonna come, and like it's gonna be, the bottom may
Yeah.
fall out, but it's gonna feel back. Like you was just like
And
very
imagine how many years ago that was. At that point I thought I was seeing some ups and downs, and that's I had many more after that. So it's like it never really stops. It's one of those things where you really need to enjoy what you're doing, and you really have to have like a purpose in it. Otherwise, like sure, you could go do anything else. And also it's not for everybody. So and that's
not
fine. To your point, like if somebody offered me something that made sense that was a crazy amount too, then sure, why not, right? Like I don't
right.
think there's anything wrong with whatever job you have, but what I won't do and what I refuse to do is work in a space or with people or in any type of area or industry.
Uh-oh.
A warning on my phone. So there we
Oh
go with more
no.
trials and tribulations. My whole thing did a little alert. But what I won't do is work in a space where I'm waking up every day like, oh, I don't want to do this, right? Or like, you know how sometimes folks seem like just super miserable with their job. And
Yes.
yet also work is work and nobody wants to do none of that. So like when people still ask about like how much I love what I do, et cetera, it's like, okay, I would still wish I wasn't doing anything. Like, let's be real. So, and maybe this is speaking to what you were talking about earlier, where it's like, let's be real. If we didn't have to work, I wouldn't be doing this either. I'm not just trying to be like super entrepreneur out here for no reason. Like, but it's doing very well. I love the impact that it has on people. I love the ability to pay folks, have people on my team, etc. Like, there's just so many benefits to it. And anytime I have thought about doing something else, like going to work somewhere or whatever, it just I don't know, it just never feels like really right. So for me,
Same.
I'm cool sticking here where I am.
Same. I that resonates so deeply on a spiritual level. The leap has been crazy. I
Hmm.
quit August 2019, so less than 6 months
Mm.
before the pandemic. Had no idea we were we were headed. And the bottom has fell out a couple of times, but now it's like you make it. It's like
Yeah,
love.
yeah. That is, you know what? That is one thing to where I don't know if maybe my skin has gotten too thick, but I feel like what happens is like I have a really low tolerance for complaining now because people will talk about,
Mm,
issues that they have and it's like, okay, like I don't know, at this point I'm just a problem solver and I'm just used to all the things that have to get done and that you have to move through. And so I also do have friends though who sometimes are like mad because I'm not that person to really vent to, right? Like I'm trying to find a solution and move on to the next thing. So sometimes it does have repercussions with like your personal life and relationships and things like that, because you're so used to like go, 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 or you're so used to like figuring things out. Um, or, you know, you may feel like you don't have time to do a lot of those things or to give the attention where you need to as well. So there's a lot to kind of balance with it.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your upbringing and what pieces of that you
Mm-hmm.
feel um, comes through your work and shapes how you got to your values. If people don't know you very pro black,
Mm-hmm.
your emojis are the darkest
Mm-hmm.
emojis.
Yeah, my friend hates them. I love using them all the time because they're like, "Who is that?" Like that is me. um,
But what? Tell us
but
a little bit about how you
hmm,
got to this point. That that that
yeah.
shapes your work because you're very intentional with your work, as you said.
So, but I'll actually say it's more kind of recent, how I've let those things really be a part of the work, right? What
Mm,
happened was that it was literally like one day, probably 2019, maybe even 2020. Like, sure, I've always been like pro-black, all of these things. And yet there was a point around 19 or 20 where I was kind of feeling like, all right, what's the point of this? Like, you know, I had work, I was doing stuff with clients,
mm,
but it wasn't intentionally in those spaces or to help in those ways.
mm.
And I just wasn't really
Yeah.
feeling the work that much. So what I did, I remember
Mm,
this one day, what I did was I pulled out one of my 5,000 whiteboards and I just started writing all the things that I care about. Um, and so I was writing about like, okay, empowering Black communities and women, all the different things I wanted to that I care about.
right.
And then I literally, like, this sounds so phony, but like I literally looked at that list and then looked at my work and started trying to write down like how are the ways that I do something in that space. And
Mm,
I started to connect the dots, number one, to realize like, oh, so I am kind of doing these things. But
right.
now I moved the work and I moved the company to be more intentional about it. And so that was really almost kind of the start of that revamp to where I was like, oh, okay, we, how does our work, how does my work reflect me instead
Right.
of me, like the other way around?
Right.
And so that's when I started transitioning everything. Like, yo, I need to work with people that I like around products that I care about, that helps communities that I care about. Otherwise, like, I'm not doing it. And that's what makes it all a little bit easier. And it's, I mean, it's a blessing and fortunate to be able to have that option, right? Because at the
Right.
beginning of business, sometimes you don't. And I used to do all kind of work that I was like, whatever, boring or, you know, just kind of dry or whatever. But I think that over time, I've been able to make my work a reflection of me. And that's what makes it easier. And that's
Mhm.
also why, you know, when people are kind of like, oh, you're always working, it's like, no, it's not necessarily that. They're just, the two things are just very aligned. And I think alignment is important with your work and your values.
I love that. I love that. And I feel the same way. I was talking to a good friend, and one of the things that happened when I was working for either other another local government or county governments, you have these great
Mm-hmm.
ideas, and you might have to partner with someone who didn't get it, or you get so far in the project and you have to like come back, and like now it's like I can go from idea to execution with little leeway and be able to create, and that is such a reward. It's so fulfilling because my efforts typically aren't in vain the same way I feel like they were working for another
Mm-hmm.
company. And then of course I get to work with people that I adore and inspire. I think
Mm-hmm.
really takes away some of the weight of the work because it is a lot of work. Let's talk a little bit about tools and schedule because you mentioned your whiteboard gang, um,
Mm-hmm.
chart
Yeah,
paper
I have like
gang,
6 whiteboards up in
planner
my
gang.
room.
You gifted me this beautiful planner
Hmm.
um last year where I was having a breakdown. You were like,
Oh
sis.
yeah. And you know what? I don't even use that one anymore. Like, so that's one
See?
thing too. I would say like you always have to be open to
Yes.
evolving like your processes and how you're productive, how you're organizing, how you're scheduling. And I've always been like that, right? Like I've always been
Same.
like on this quest of how can I be the most productive or feel like I'm getting the things done I need to get done or whatever it may be. And so now I have a whole new process that I do, which I don't know, maybe it's not that different, but just little things changing just makes things
Hmm.
more effective for me. And I've been doing like really well with that. And then as things change, I don't know if it's need, the work or whatever, but then you're always open to being adaptable to that and that also changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely rotate. I have several. I have a whiteboard with words. I write
Mm-hmm.
down stuff. I have a planner. I have chart paper. It's a lot of different tools that I use. What process, like, what's your day look like now?
Mm-hmm.
And how does that? I know every day is different. I'm assuming like mine. But what's kind of part of
Mm-hmm.
your routine that you kind of need to get in every day or every week?
Hmm. Well, you know what? Every day is not that different for me
Really?
anymore. And maybe that's why things like move along even better. And
Okay.
also nowadays, I have more time than ever to like watch Netflix or to chill or like I hang
What?
out with my friends
Okay.
more.
Where's
It's
let me
weird.
get my pen and
It's
paper.
weird. So I've been the most productive in the last couple months and also like with work, but also like literally every other day, like I hang with my friends on the weekends. I don't do anything or I hang with my friends. Um, I have time to read. I literally like I binge watched Netflix shows. I'm like watching like 2 hours of Netflix a day too. And I still get my 7, 8 hours of sleep.
Nice.
So so what I'll say about that, about routine and about like production for me right now that's working, um, is like I hop up, I do my coffee, I I take one of my whiteboards now that I use and I look at my calendar for the day. And what I do is I have, what does it say? It says biz dev, no, yeah, new business or biz dev, clients, and then Cap Soc stuff. So based on what's on my calendar, I'll put in like if I have a meeting, if it's an internal meeting that goes in like the Cap Soc stuff. If I have a client meeting that goes down there. So I think one of the biggest things I've realized is that when we're thinking about the things you have to get done today, you have to also um, include and think about how much time it takes just having all these Zooms and stuff all day, right?
That's
So
so true.
it's okay if today I had 5 meetings and you may not have that whole other list of things to do that you get done. So based on that, right, I'll start to put down like, okay, here's the meetings I have to do. Look at the next day and it's like, okay, I probably have to prep an agenda for this, or what do you have to prep for tomorrow that has to get done today? And then outside of that, it's okay, what are those couple top things that you need to do? As far as like actually typing or writing or whatever it may be. And so now I have this very clean list, and I have other lists of like 5,000 things where you have to just brain up all the things to
Right.
get done. And there's really 5,000 things to do.
Same.
But when I'm looking at a list, oh, and then I have the personal. So that's like my workout, or I got to return something to the store or whatever, right?
Right.
Um, so as I'm going through the day, I'm literally just crossing the things out. And it may just be 5 or 6 things. But once I cross them all out, I feel good. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
those were the things I had to do today.
Right.
Outside of that, it's like, okay, I'll start to chill. I might cook or eat, watch some TV, chill. And then lately, I've kind of started having like a second wind, like around like 7 o'clock ish or so. And
Okay.
I might hop in, and like just do a couple emails or something. But then what tends to happen is once you start, then you just kind of get in a little groove, and I might work for a couple more hours.
True.
Um, so that's kind of like how I've been moving, and it's been working pretty well. Another big key that I'll say too is that I've really gamified my email. So instead of me having like 500 messages, like I literally all through the day am trying to figure out how can I get back to zero. And that
Ooh.
doesn't mean I get to zero every day because I do not.
Right.
But like right now, I probably have like 10 emails, and that's not crazy. And I'm traveling, and the most is happening. So, what I do is like, when I am checking my email, it's like, all right, what can I send to somebody else to do, or do a quick response, or just delete the email. But like, I can put this on one of my action trackers or something later, right? So I just
Okay.
want to keep it down, keep it down, keep it down. Um, and it's like every time something comes in, I just want to, how can I get this out the way? Um, so I
I,
love when I get junk mail now because it's like, bloop, that's out, bloop, that's out, bloop, that's out.
right.
If somebody's like, hey, can I get an update on this? I Slack somebody and say, hey, this person needs an update. Or if I can do it really quick, I'll do it. But to just kind of attack things quickly in that way or just get them out of the way has been a game changer because I think sometimes I would get like a lot of anxiety just seeing all the stuff, right? And even now, you still do, especially when it's like, Google Drive and somebody's just commenting 500 things on a doc or something. I like that too because it's like, well, let me delete 499 of them and I see the one so I can
Right.
go back to the sheet and then do it later.
Right.
So that's been a big thing too. Instead of like avoiding the things, just like hopping
Mm.
in and just move it to where it needs to be.
I love
That's
that.
been a big key.
I'm definitely going to try to attempt. I'm looking. I don't even want to talk about it. Okay, I don't want to mention them, but it does cause
How many
anxiety.
emails do you have right now?
Um, 3,921.
Whoa, my God. Yeah, I probably have 10. And when I
um,
woke up this morning, I had 6. And so some of them I'll leave with, sometimes people get too extensive in the email. It's like, all right, let me do this when I can do it.
right.
But yeah, like, so today, like, I went through some of my emails and I just started a doc of like all the things, for this one client, and just started kind of putting stuff there. So really, like, I just got to move things around. I don't like seeing a bunch of stuff in front of me.
I understand that. I've been really trying to work on more of like doing blocks. Like, okay, I know today was crazy. I probably wasn't going to get
Mm-hmm.
to it, but maybe tomorrow morning I have a 2-hour block to work through emails. If I owe you email, you're on here. You're getting it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tomorrow.
And you kind of got to know, who needs something kind of quick and who's just like
Exactly.
whatever. So all of these factors combined is like, all right, let me get this stuff out of the way.
But one of the things you spoke to too, which has been something that I've been trying to get out of this quarantine rut
Mm-hmm.
and depression cycle into like more my brain is working again, is of course exercise, taking vitamins,
Mm-hmm.
getting sunlight has been really critical for me. But then also like kind of creating some structure
Mm-hmm.
around my routine has been beneficial. I'm not at the chill part every day where you are.
Mm. Let me tell you something else, and I'm not even trying to make y'all be hating on your girl, but I'm really proud of this because you know what? I just added another activity to my schedule. I do tennis
What?
lessons on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. So I
Okay,
I,
Venus.
I literally I work out with a trainer, and he lives so far away, so that's like 2 hours of my time even to get there, do it, and come back, right?
Mm,
Or really
right.
2.5. Somehow, and I go at 12 p.m., 1 p.m., like random. I go to my
Right.
trainer Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesday, I go to a tennis lesson at 5. Thursday, I go to a tennis lesson at 5. So it's something about what I've seen is like the more things I add to my schedule,
The
the
better.
tighter I am, during my time.
That might be it because I'm just now getting out of that, right? But my schedule's been picking
Oh, excuse
up.
me.
Like I had a
Hmm.
full weekend, and so I've been forced to move a little bit quicker. But maybe that's it. I was thinking maybe for me it's a touch points with
Hmm.
people and getting more sunlight, but it may be also the forced schedule that it's
Shoot.
not an infinite amount of time to
Well,
get
that sun
some
is important, and that is a game
sun.
changer because the wintertime, I just have to be kind to myself and let that shit just rock because I'm not. I would be like calling it a day at like 4 o'clock and just like I can't. My brain goes dead when the sun goes down. But I will say, like even in the last couple of weeks, I was complaining because I had so many Zooms like back to back and meetings. But I also like looking back at it, I felt so good that week in
Mm,
general. Like I was being productive. And then so the week later, I had less meetings, and I also realized like with less like things that I either have to be prepared for or like that make me have to be somewhere, I am moving kind of slow or like I'm not getting as much done.
mm.
So like I really like just throw everything in that schedule. But again, like it's important to recognize that I'm scheduling the play. I'm scheduling the
Right.
like the hangouts, like,
Yes.
shout out Shauna, just saw she hopped in for a second. Like, we're gonna make sure we go to our brunches and like do the
Yeah.
things and go to
Yeah.
dinners. Yeah, like it's not all about work. Like you can make the
Absolutely.
time to do all the things. It's just really about being clear on what's priority that needs to get done day to day. So like that first thing I was talking about with how I organize, like what's the things to get done, is helpful because once those are done, to me, everything else is extra. So I mean, you got to make time to like just kind of chill. And the crazy thing is, I know also at the end of the day, the work that I'm doing, I'm probably still doing like 5 times more than a lot of people, may be doing just going to their office or whatever. So like, just be kind to yourself. You don't have to be like sitting on your laptop or like doing things for 10 hours a day. You really don't.
I love that. And I had a friend recently who was just like, make sure you're giving yourself every day something you're looking forward to, whether it is,
Mm-hmm.
again, like you said, watching a show or talking to a friend. For me, often involve like some sweet or some candy. I need to find other substitutes to reward myself.
Mm-hmm.
But that has been helpful too, just to making sure that I'm taking care of myself and being really kind to myself. We
Yeah.
got a comment that says, so true, reminds me of elementary school and
Not
the right
elementary.
elementary. That's
Dang.
what it says. The right schedule, but gave so much structure. Got it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Oh, how tight schedule. Okay, great. So let's talk about Cap Soc and some of the things you've been able to do. What are some of the things that you're
Mhm.
most proud of? I am I'm blessed to you've always been like that friend in my head, but like now actually
I didn't think you're my friend. When I came back to DC, we hung out.
we
I haven't been
did.
in a while though. I am kind of
I
missing it.
know, I know.
Um,
And you're so fun to hang out with, like just in general. But like, I was a fan first, and
not a fan.
so you worked with so many big brands, so many big people. So tell us some of the things that you're proud of, some of the things
Hmm.
that has, been some historic moments for you so far.
You know
So
what?
far.
I don't even know if I would say like I work with the biggest brands as much as like I've been able to make and be a part of brands growth. So like for
Mm,
example, I'm super proud of the work that we did with Black and Bold, the coffee brand that was
yeah.
owned by two black guys, because when we started working with them, the back of their e-commerce store was like 2K a month. And then literally within 6 months, it was over 100K. Now this year, and this was in 2020, this year they've crossed the $1 million. And I'm not saying
Wow.
that's all social media by any means either,
Right.
but it's a good kind of way to like, we're really amplifying the stories, the things they care about. They really wanted to have these conversations about Black people in the space. They
Yeah.
were unapologetic about the things that they wanted to do and talk about. And I think it's a really good example of how when you're really like tight on like what you care about and letting that show, like sometimes people are scared. And I'm always disappointed when I work with, especially like Black people who are scared to be like, they not have a Black focus. And it's like, okay,
Mm,
but that's the supporters and that's the people who, are sitting here on your stuff following you and talking about you the most. So
exactly.
you got to honor that. I got an opportunity to work on the Biden campaign. Was it last year?
Nice.
Look, I can't keep up with the years now.
I
2020.
can.
um I'm proud of I'm proud of a lot more internal things actually than things we've done outside. um but I'm proud of the work that we're doing with DD Hirsch, which is the biggest mental health services organization out here in Southern California. They're the ones who answer the suicide hotline. When we
Yeah.
started working with them, it's like, yo, y'all are a $62 million organization and you provide so much in services, counseling, therapy. They have multiple kind of spaces that people can go to get help, etc. They have a big suicide prevention center in LA, and yet, you go on your social and your stuff, and it's like nothing really happening here. And there's
Hmm.
such a big opportunity. You know how popular now, like mental health communities on
Yes.
Instagram and social
Yeah.
are. And so to go in and be like, listen, let's make your social a place where people can get resources and stats in interesting ways. So we kind of revamp their look of like these sliders around mental health.
Nice.
We get to focus on Black mental health, youth mental health, in all these spaces that they are passionate about, but they let us actually create content and have those conversations around it. Mental health is Health Month is coming up in May, so we're
Yeah.
about to be doing a whole lot of activation with them on that as well. And we just
And you
consulted
did the
with,
walk with them last year as well,
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. They
suicide
did a
prevention walk.
suicide walk in September. They raised, I think, like $500,000 from that.
Wow.
They'll be doing the fundraising all throughout May as well. So things like that make it really fun.
Yeah.
But even some of the smaller folks like Black Leaf Tea, and you spoke with Amber. You had her on, I think, last
Yeah.
Wednesday, even to kind of give those folks insight, right? When you're new with your business and new to
Yeah.
like really like going all in with it, being able to work with folks like that and do the research and show them what other people are doing that's successful, giving them kind of seeing them have like, oh, I never thought about that, kind of looks when we're talking about, what have you thought about this idea or that idea. So that's really what I love, right? To spark
Yeah.
that in folks, like, oh, I never thought about that. And I think a lot of times we can be so like entrenched in what we
The
do and
work.
the work
Yeah,
that we
absolutely.
take it for advantage, or for me, I know I take or take for granted rather, that everybody doesn't know some of the things I think are like basic, right? So there's been times I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, they probably didn't get nothing out of this talk, or me having a conversation with them about their social or whatever. And yet it's so always surprising to me. I'll be on the phone with somebody who just called and just want to ask a quick question. And I'm like, oh, what have you thought about doing this? And then you can do this and add this component. And they're like, man, you're a genius. Like you should,
You are a
and like,
genius.
and like they'll be like, oh, it's so awesome and great. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I thought that was kind of a,
And that's been my experience too, and I want a budget so I can hire you. But like one of the things that I hopped on the call, I think one of the things you're really good at is taking convoluted or complex information and really making it succinct and streamlining it in really tangible ways that I think once you're in it, like it's really hard to see until you step away and have some
Mm-hmm.
fresh. So I think that's
Yeah.
one of
Yeah, and that is important, right? And sometimes I
mm-hmm,
think about that for me too. Is like also sometimes I need fresh eyes. So it's like, how
true.
do I get a step away from, what's going on to think out of the box? Because it is really easy to kind of do the same kind of tactics and the same things as
Yeah,
well, some of which are in your toolbox because they work and they're effective. I think the
yeah,
biggest thing is having the care and the extra step to take the things out of your toolbox. Sorry, every time somebody notifies me on my phone, it goes black. But to apply that specifically to that client or to that person in a way where now that's authentic for them, or it really gets a point
yeah,
across, it doesn't just fall flat. So that's why, for a while I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how can I make things like way more cookie cutter, because like
yeah.
I feel like I'm inventing the wheel every time. And yet I got to a place where I realized, oh, it's the same tools, but like how do we tweak them for the right person to make it more effective, et cetera. And like that's okay.
Masterminds don't always
Thank
keep
you.
their cheap.
Look, oh, I need to steal that. Yo, say that for me. Let me remember that. That is how it feels though. But like I just see this stuff all day, every day, and it's just like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, like people don't think like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think you have many guests. I think that's one of the things that kind of. I know you work
Mhm.
with Black and Bold. You mentioned them, and you
Mhm.
connected or worked on a campaign with Ben and Jerry's to do
Mhm.
some ice cream, which is phenomenal. Um,
Right. And it's like, how do you go from like you're selling coffee, in your garage or whatever, to like you got a Ben and Jerry's collab and like stuff like that, just really cool. And I think a lot of times also for a lot of the clients that I have that are maybe folks of color or come from a certain space where it's like, I might not know the first thing about how to do stuff like that.
exactly.
It's it's exciting, and I'm glad also for the exposure that they're able to show to other people, that you can do these types of things. So I
Mm,
love everybody that I work with because they actually have like a great product or a great service, right? Also,
yeah.
so everybody I work with, they make it easy because it's not like we're trying to lie and make things up. I think that's
Right.
one of the biggest things about social that people complain about when it comes to like individuals, like, oh, you just aren't here, tweeting anything, like people don't know you in real life.
You're right.
But when it comes to this stuff for like your brand, like this is not transparent. Like it has to be transparent. Like people know what's
Mm.
really going on and what's not going on. And so it makes the most sense to like do what's really you and like be reflective of like what y'all are really doing, who you really are, etc.
That it's so powerful because I think it catapults the possibilities. I know for me of how we can approach, um, business and entrepreneurship and moving from like the solo entrepreneurship to or
Mm-hmm.
solopreneur to really building, a brand and being able to hire people and scale the way
Mm-hmm.
that I definitely believe a lot of our products should be able to do, but there's still so many barriers. So I think one of those are the things that bring up. So let's talk about, you talk a lot about like some of the challenges that you experienced, but what are some of the things that you feel like you experienced that was a barrier as a Black woman? If people don't know, Alexis is down a little bit today, but she's like Rihanna
Mm.
fine. Like
Nah,
she's
she said basically she looking bummy today. I am looking
that's not what
bummy,
I
y'all.
said.
No,
That's
no,
not
no.
what I
But
said.
but that's why when we started, that's why I was like, you know what, like it is what it is. Like
It's
I
what it
literally
is.
and you should have seen me 5 seconds before we started because I was my hair was like all over the place. I wasn't doing nothing. And I was on my laptop like trying to finish some stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I got to get ready for this. Um, but I
Completely understand. But like what do you feel like some of those barriers are? Do you feel I know there's been times where I feel like as a woman or what people would, consider, aesthetically attractive.
I don't see that many barriers. And
Really?
but let me explain that because that's one of those things, how folk could take something out of context, like, oh, you don't think Black people have barriers? That's not what I'm saying. What I have experienced, so let me just rephrase what you're saying. I have experienced uh, some interaction, some things in a particular way because I really can for sure identify to be like being a woman.
Mm-hmm.
The Black woman part probably too.
Right.
So I've experienced certain things, right? I've spoken at the White House. I was teaching to federal agencies at the White House, and as soon as I started speaking, I literally saw people be like, "Oh," and like look up, like, "Oh, she can speak," and I was like, "Okay, guys." Or like even it was the Black people afterwards. They were like, "Oh wow, you did such a great job!" Like, wow. And it's like, guys, it was, you know, what I mean, it's not that deep. Like, would you have said
Yeah.
that if some any old random like white guy went up there and started talking, you would have just expected him to sound good. Um,
Mm.
I've walked into places, and again, this is another Black man. I walked into a place. It was like a real realtor, a brokerage, and this Black man looked at me and said, "What do you know about social media?" And I was like, "What?" Like, I was like, "This
You tell me you
house?"
built it?
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? And I remember I think about that often actually, because that's one of the things, like, I was so stunned that I didn't say anything. I was there to consult to one of the realtors, and I was like so stunned. I was just like I didn't really say anything. And I always think about like, you know, what I could have said, like, hey, I've worked with a lot of realtors, and like that was my first client ever before I really made this a business, was a realtor who I started working with him for 1 week, and he sold a house that was like 1.5, because somebody in Denver emailed him and said, "Hey, I noticed you had a good online presence and social. Can you sell my mom's house in Bethesda?" So like,
Wow.
what the fuck do you mean? Like, what do I know, right? Like, so,
Right.
so like, if I think back to those things, and they shock you in the moment, and it's like, okay, so I can recall certain interactions and experiences, that make me aware of the fact that people might be expecting something different or looking at me
Hmm.
different, but I also recognize that as a woman and as a Black woman, I also have way more advantages in that I can really tighten in on and hone in on being in this space of, hey, this is no digital blackface over here. Like, I have a team of Black folks who is talking to Black people, or who is
Right.
creating these campaigns,
Right.
who knows what we're talking about, right? Like, who can talk about music, culture, etc., and it doesn't have to be so phony or whatever.
Right.
Um, and so I also see it that way. And like, I I wouldn't necessarily say like I feel like I'm held back or have a barrier, as much as I have so much opportunity, because there are quite a few people, lots of businesses who are looking for those diverse
Yeah,
components and
absolutely.
agencies. Disney reached out to me because they were like, "Oh, we want to have more Black agencies to work on Cameron Hall show." So it's
No way.
like they. The thing is, like, I'm open to be found, mostly like via LinkedIn. I think is where they hit me, but like, those opportunities come to you because you're in that space. So that's something I think that most people shouldn't shy away from or be afraid to really own.
I love that. I think for me, it's been sometimes I allow myself to be in a position where I feel like I need to prove myself or prove my
Hmm.
competency. I think sometimes I take away energy of just actually
Yeah.
delivering,
Oh,
you
I
know?
do that too. Like, you always feel like that, right? Like, I
Right.
think there's a lot of Black people who always feel like we got to prove something. Um, and meanwhile everybody else is hella mediocre, right? But
So true.
but that's also a people thing. Like,
Yeah.
when you own it, and I even still feel like this sometimes. I was going through this, I think, like last week. When you own it and you start to feel like, oh, like I don't want to lose this, or I don't want to lose these clients or opportunity or whatever. And again, it's like, take a step back and recognize like how much you really are doing and how great of a job you are doing in the first place. But it is really easy to fall into that for sure.
I agree. But that I think, reshaping and reframing and saying that you're an asset, regardless, I think is something, and I think it's something that we definitely seen since
Hmm.
2020, since the uprisings for sure, where people are seeking out, Black voices. And I think one of the things that you mentioned on was like how you do it authentically. You mentioned your team too. Can you talk a little bit about two things? One, how you go about, bringing the team, and then also, are there
Hmm.
any clients that you feel like, okay, they weren't a good fit, and like, how do you like, I ain't gonna work
Oh,
with
I just let two clients go today.
you?
Uh,
What?
I let two go, and then one had to leave because they were such a new startup that they were like, oh man, I can't do this quite right now. And that's also understandable, right?
Yeah,
Because when you're a new business, sure, you understand social is important. We understand all these things are important, because
yeah,
I went through the same thing where it's like you can't do everything because you don't
yeah,
have those funds.
yeah,
And so stuff like that makes sense. But to answer your second question first, since I already kind of went down that road, I have had clients sometimes where it's like, listen, if this A isn't benefiting us, And that I have no case study for y'all because y'all, we're for whatever reason not being able to get done like what we want to get done.
Right.
Um, then it doesn't make sense, right? Because I have bigger clients like DD Hurst that I need my people to be focused on if we're going to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Or if, but I would say there are some folks too where it doesn't matter, you can work with them on a smaller dime if they're still impactful and if it makes sense, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and if all those pieces just aren't there, then they're not there. But again,
Mm.
I was just having this conversation earlier today where I was like, I'm so fortunate and I feel so blessed to have that option to be like, hey,
Yeah.
you know what? It's kind of not really working out, to work with you guys. Or even having the option of when people are trying to work with me, being like, yeah, I don't know if this is the best fit. And that
Right.
feels so good because
Yeah.
otherwise, like we said, that's why at first, you're kind of like, I'm taking on everybody I can because you got to make your ends meet and you want to, make sure you have food on the table. And yet
Right.
every time it's going to be your worst clients, the ones who are paying the least are the ones who are the most nitpicky about things. Like, they
I've heard
always
that
end up
several
being,
times from people.
yes,
Like it's just across the board
it's
where
easier to work with somebody who's gonna pay you 50K a month than to work with somebody who wants to pay you $500 a month. It
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And because that comes with the understanding of, I know I understand investment, or I understand what I need to do, or
Mm.
whatever it may be. Um, Not to say that there's not also probably much more work involved
Right.
in that, but it is. And so that's something I've kind of learned also, is that one of the most important things in entrepreneurship is working with the right folks, like the right clients, or like the right, if you have a product, it's still like the right audience that you're catering to. That's the most important thing, because it doesn't have to be for everybody. You don't have to be for everybody. And if you can really narrow down a space and like attack that and be known in that space, like you'll be much more successful. Over the last year or so doing this revamp, that's kind of what happened. Where what I did was I thought like, all right, I've had so many different clients, from working with the White House to Lala Anthony on a book to a
Nice.
movie to a bank to law
I
school
feel like you did a play
organizations.
with one of the tape
Oh
people.
yeah, the audio series with
Yeah.
Lawrence Fishburne and Lorenz Tate
Yeah.
and them. Like, it's so many different things, right? Art gallery, and so it's easy to be like, okay, this is fine because we work with all those people. And yet, over that last year, what I did was I looked at all these people and say, you know what, who's had the actual like best case studies? So
Mm.
I can think about like, what is the criteria for who I really want to work with? Like, who
Right.
has that spark and that thing that's
Yeah.
easy to pop off also. Because like I said, I could work with anybody, but if we're not getting a case study out of it, then we're not doing impactful work that
Mm.
matters. So what I came down to was kind of three types of folks that we work with. One is kind of like audio slash entertainment, because we did really well with like Bronzeville series that you mentioned, movies, things
Mm.
like that are easy because they're already kind of, people know these celebs, or they
Yeah.
know these directors, whatever the project may be, right? So stuff like that is cool. It's just about getting people on board and having cool conversations, etc. So that's one space. The other is mission driven,
Mm.
and that's includes like the nonprofits, the folks who have big social impact involved, um, even politics to a degree. And then that third one is ecom, in that product, if you have a product, right? Because if
Yeah.
you have a product that you're selling, and if my social media strategy can show you, hey, when you do this, you get this many clicks. Out of every 100 clicks, you get this many sales. You can give people, I don't know who's behind me talking all loud, but you can give people the equation so that they see exactly like, oh, I see how this work directly impacts conversions or sales or whatever. And
Mm.
so that just makes sense to do that. And if you have a product, then that means you know exactly kind of like what you're doing, giving conversation around, or trying to, get people to engage around with those things. Same with a mission, right? Mission driven.
Right.
You know what that conversation is going to be around.
Right.
And then with entertainment, you know what that conversation's
It's
around, and that
true.
storytelling. So, and I didn't even think about that part of it, but so those are like the three spaces. And it was so funny. And these are all things that I swear I feel like I'm all into self-help books and podcasts and stuff like that. And I
Right.
think that over the years I've always heard all these things. And yet I had to really, things like click when they click.
Yep.
And when I'm like at a space where it's like, all right, I gotta kind of change something. So I think what happened was, as soon as I was like, all right, we work with this, this, and this, all the calls I started getting were around those things. And I was
Mm.
able to easily was able to be like, yeah, this isn't actually a good fit because it's just something way over here that's, it's just
And
off
then people
unless it's
begin to
something
self-select
crazy.
too. Like they begin to self-select
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. Like if you have that very clear too, that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense too.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned books, and I'm a huge. You can see I got a lot of books. And I listen to a lot of
I
Audible.
have
I
another book client now as well.
really,
Her name is Michelle Gadsden Williams, and I'm just doing this so I can shout her out too. And she wrote Driven by
shout out.
Intention. She is one of the very top execs
Nice.
at BlackRock, which is a $1 trillion like investment company. Like that's on the financial
Wow.
side, so I apologize if I'm messing up the terminology. She's a Black woman, and she just had a book that dropped, and the person who sent her my way is Ghost Note, one of the guys at Ghost Note Agency who's in DC that I've partnered with on other projects in the past. And so that's also good to keep in mind is like the relationships you have with other businesses, other folks, and people being able to vouch for you and know that they can send folks your way too. And I'm sorry, I just like totally went off from your question about a
No,
book.
but that's really good. That kind of ties into it too, because I think relationship has been authentic relationships. Like I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, especially in DC, like they're very like, I just want to be here and be seen and touch points. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Texas. I'm from the South. I know you have lived from the South. I'm not sure if you're from the South
Mm-hmm. I
though.
grew up in North Carolina, and then my
Okay.
I'm in Memphis right now, so this is where my father's from, in Memphis.
Okay. And so for me it's like I'm either feeling it or not. I'm very energy
Mm-hmm.
driven. And but once that connection is there, it's like we can start from like how deep you want to go. I
Mm-hmm.
just know that Aquarian energy too. But I think that has been the most valuable assets. I want to see if there's any podcast, book, Audible
Mm-hmm.
that you top of mind that you feel like was probably most helpful in your entrepreneurship
Mm-hmm.
journey.
It was a lot of them. So it's kind of changed over time, but as far as podcasts, a couple of the podcasts that really got me going at the beginning are Smart Passive Income by
Okay.
Pat Flynn. He used to always have interviews with folks on stuff like how to build your email list or
Mm.
the science of like your website or podcasting, all those things, right?
Let
So
me
I
write
like
that
I
down.
like listening to, yeah, and if you he has like hundreds of them now
I
because this
thought it
is
was just more about passive income, not like how
because
to.
he started during a time where like you could get paid for blogging, but that time is so different now,
Oh,
right? So it's
yeah.
evolved over time, but that's how he got his start, and he was telling other people how to do that, right? How to hack those things. But then it kind of just became about like business in any way it was still applicable. Another one I really like, The School of Greatness with Lewis Howes. More back in the day when I feel like it was a little more tactical as well. Now I feel like I hear people's like success stories just in general, and it's like, okay, cool. But they're used to, if you go back to some of the earlier ones, because he has thousands as well, they really like tell you how to do things.
Mm.
Another podcast that is not business related, um, two podcasts that are not business related, but that I really enjoy are Baggage Reclaim by Natalie Liu. And that one's about like dissecting your own baggage to like for
Ooh.
relationships. Most of it is like kind of romantic relationships, but it's just about family, your self care, all those things. And I just like a lot of those like psychology type joints
Yeah.
because, I just like, that makes a lot of things click for me as well. So those are a couple of the podcasts. There's a lot of books. Uh, there's so many books, and let me see what I could think of. Kind of in the same space as like the last type of podcast I was talking about, like Untether Soul, things that are around um, your mind, your connection with your mind. I like Joe Dispenza has a couple of really good books about what's the name of it though? It's about changing who you are and changing your habits. Oh yeah, Baggage Reclaim is fire. To the person who put that comment, it really is fire. I sent it to somebody who was going through a breakup one time, and they were like, "Damn, this shit good." And she has a really good blog too. Um, so Joe Dispenza is like how you like rewire your brain. um, right now, I'm reading a couple things. There's so many books. I have
I love that. I think
I have so many.
one of the ones that come to mind is like WeWork.
Mhm.
I think really kind of made me rethink about management and
Mhm.
what it needs to look like and how do we deformalize not only what my management style looks like, but how our work looks. It's very informal. I don't think you need formalities to actually
Mhm.
learn or to gather stuff. And then What is the name
Yeah,
of the
like that's
book?
the thing. You got to honor, like, you have to honor yourself. I think we try a lot of times, like, fit into another thing, like another shape, to learn something, to be productive or whatever. And really, you have to understand yourself and, like, how do you absorb things? How do you get things done? Whatever it is, and you can make your world reflect you instead of the other way around.
I
Like, that's
love that.
such a game changer.
And there's another one. It's an Audible that I listened to, and I can't remember if it's the Soul of the Earth or something. I
I
have to
know,
find
right? We over here freezing on these books, knowing we got hella books in the
hella
back.
book, but it's the same thing. It was more about this psychological approach to the world and how we basically need to decenter ourselves so we
Hmm.
can really optimize our presence in our life
Yeah, that's
force.
hard. It
Right.
does seem like the less you focus on yourself, the more you actually like make moves. And part of that
Exactly.
also is because you're kind of removing like that those fears or those thoughts about what people think about certain stuff or whatever. And seeing Carly pop in, I gotta talk about my own
Hey.
podcast, huh? We have a
You didn't even
podcast
touch on
too.
that yet.
I know. We have a
So
podcast too
much.
called Carly's Couch. And I think where that kind of came from also is that, I listen to so many podcasts and so many things that my life really has become about, it's a constant transformation, constant growth, etc. And just being able to talk about those things and from a real perspective. Like, we like to just talk about what's going on. I'll be talking about how
Yeah.
I'm messing up and how I learned this through like a failure and a loss. I think that we focus so much on these panels and success
Mm,
stories that we
yeah.
don't keep it real about like what's really happening. I've been on quite a few panels. I want to say maybe you was at one of them. I've been on quite a
I
few
was.
panels
That's where we first
where
met.
afterwards I'm talking to the people and it's like, oh, you're not really making a. I'm about to be all cursing. You're not making nothing. Like, you're not making no money. I've been on a panel where I was like, damn, to be honest, y'all, I just lost two clients. Like, like
Mm,
keep it real. It's okay
yep.
because that's what people need to see as opposed to like idealizing, oh, starting a business and this is how it looks and this is what happens. And it feels so weird when you're really in the space and you see people getting spotlighted or highlighted. It's like it feels kind of fraudulent. And yet
Woo, I'm glad you said it because I feel that.
and yet though at the same time, they're also on that same journey where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you know what I mean? Like, you also don't need to be on stage like downing yourself the whole time. But I
Yeah.
had an idea, and maybe I'll bring it to life one day, to have a failure panel where all we
Yeah.
could talk about is how we messed up something, um, how
And
you messed up
there
something
was
and
a
what you got out
blog
of it.
that used to be like the failure log, and people can like
Mm.
sign into it and
That's
write their
funny.
failures. I
Hmm.
can't remember the name of it, but I heard about it on some business podcast. And I felt like it was really good because it really just highlighted big businesses. A lot of times with big business where they lost millions of dollars, but it's the art of
Hmm.
trying is where you really begin to kind of find your niche. Can we talk a little bit before we close out? What does your ecosystem of support look like, and how do you
Hmm.
cultivate that to make sure
We
you
might,
have?
cause look, high key, I got 3% on my phone.
Oh,
Just FYI, but we are in the last couple minutes.
okay.
But just in case,
I know,
it's
right?
it's been a pleasure in case I
Indeed.
fall off. I was moving so fast and I didn't bring my stuff.
Okay.
Um, what does my ecosystem look like? Um, quite frankly, lately my ecosystem looks like a lot of silence and a lot of alone time because
Mm,
I'm spending all day in like meetings and talking. I'm an introvert, so I get drained. Like, the more I'm doing, it drains me. So I
yeah.
can't, it doesn't excite me to like go out all the time or do whatever.
Yeah.
But I do spend a lot of time with my friends, like I said earlier. I'm so fortunate and I'm so happy. Like, a couple of my best friends live literally across the street.
Oh,
So they come over, we make tea, we chill, we hang. I have a couple of friends. We got a F1 group now. Like, they'll come over, watch the race on the weekends.
nice.
I have a couple of friends that I go to dinner with. Shout out my friend Tro, who has his art studio. I'll go down there for
Yeah.
change the scenery. We really get together a lot, and I think that has changed with the pandemic. Like, we
Yeah.
started to get together a little bit more. Got our big group chat and all the things now, and so I just spend a bit of time with them. But outside of that, like, I really just try to keep it chill, and
I
relax when
love
I
that.
can.
I love that. And I think you're so intentional about, showcasing your friends, showcasing people that you're connected with as well.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate your time. So here, let's tell people how they can find you, how they can
Hmm.
find your business. Let them know all your social media
Yeah.
channels.
So all of my stuff, I'm trying to write at the top. All of my stuff is Lextopia, Lex underscore Topia, And then all my oh, they let me just write in here. Boom. All my business stuff is Cap Soc Agency. So you can go to capsocagency.com to learn more about the work we're doing, look at the case studies, and how we move with intention there. And you can always just follow me on Twitter, Instagram, wherever.
He's a great follow,
And get it
y'all. Go ahead
popping.
and hit that
You
follow
know
button.
what? I've been
Right.
dry lately because I've been too busy. Like that's
It's
one thing that
okay.
changed
Whenever
too.
you pop in and pop up, it's a
You know
show. We
what?
here for it.
I want to do more, but that's also draining too, right?
Because
I don't know
that's
how some
work.
of these content creators do it because it's like I remember a time we used to live to like show what everything you're doing. Now it's like I just don't even want to be on my phone for real. So those things change, but again, I think a lot of this is honoring where you are in the journey, and sometimes
Hello.
sometimes you're not into that, and sometimes you are. So
Yeah.
you don't have to force it.
I love it. Thank you so, so much for your time, for your generosity, for all that you continue to share with us. And I know for me, seeing another Black woman do it has been inspiring and made me, realize it's possible for myself.
Thank
So
you.
sending you love and light. We're hoping you are many, many more years of prosperity to follow you in your business, and we'll continue to follow and share along as well. All right, so
Thank
that
you.
wraps up creating
I don't get to
the
say
power.
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you, Charlene. I appreciate you giving me the space for that. And next time I'm gonna be actually at the house and have a ring light and actually try to be cute. but it's hard frazzle times right now.
Listen, I get it.
But
There
it's
have been
also
many
like the
times
best
where
times for business. So it's
I've done
it is what it
some.
is.
Yeah, exactly. I've done some in a rap, and that's what it is. And I appreciate and I honor you coming in as you are. I think that's so real, and I appreciate it. All right, so that wraps up this Power of Creating It series, Women's History Month edition. We will do this because I really do want to highlight entrepreneurship and tell people how it can look, especially for Black people that are taking non-traditional routes. You can follow Starting With Today at Starting With Today on all social media, except for Twitter, we're Starting W Today. You can follow me, Charlene, at True_Charlene on all social platforms. And we will be back in April with some programming, so stay tuned. And we are excited for a great 2020.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
2022. Bye.
All right, bye.